Did you truly understand Psalm 23? Know that it is more profound than you imagine. Most people think they understand Psalm 23 because they have heard it so many times. They know the words, they recognize the rhythm, they feel a certain peace when it is read. But knowing the sound of Psalm 23 is not the same as understanding its depth. That is where many people stop too soon. They treat it like a gentle poem for sad moments, a passage for funerals, a source of comfort when life becomes heavy. But Psalm 23 is far more than that. It is not only a soft whisper for painful days, it is a bold declaration of what it means to live under the rule, care, and presence of God when life is uncertain, when danger is real, and when the soul is under pressure. David did not write these words as someone who knew God only from a distance. He wrote them as a man who had faced fear, betrayal, loneliness, warfare, and weakness. That changes everything. Because Psalm 23 was not born in a comfortable life. It was born in a life that knew what it meant to need God completely. And that is why this psalm still speaks with so much force. It does not speak to imaginary pain. It speaks to the heart that is tired, confused, wounded, and searching for rest. It speaks to the person who looks strong on the outside but feels exhausted within. It speaks to the believer who knows the language of faith but has been secretly struggling to trust God in a deeper way. The real question is not whether you have read Psalm 23 before. The real question is whether Psalm 23 has ever read you. Whether it has exposed the fear you hide, whether it has challenged your desire to stay in control, whether it has confronted the illusion that you can lead yourself and still have peace. Because the moment David says, "The Lord is my shepherd," everything changes. Those words are not religious decoration, they are surrender, they are dependence, they are a confession that without God we are not as safe, wise, or strong as we pretend to be. This is why Psalm 23 is more profound than most people imagine. It is not just about comfort. It is about trust. It is not just about being blessed. It is about being led. It is not just about surviving hard seasons. It is about discovering who God is in the middle of them. Hidden inside these familiar lines is a spiritual pattern for how to walk through fear without being consumed by it, how to face lack without losing peace, how to pass through dark valleys without believing God has left you there. So before you assume you already know this psalm, stop and listen again. There may be truths in it that you have repeated for years without ever fully receiving. And once you begin to see what David was really saying, you may realize that Psalm 23 is not simply one of the most beautiful passages in the Bible. It is one of the most confronting, because it does not just invite you to admire the shepherd, it invites you to belong to him. Why Psalm 23 is often loved but rarely understood. Psalm 23 is one of the most quoted passages in all of Scripture, and that is exactly why so many people stop seeing it. Familiarity can create a dangerous illusion. When something is repeated too often, the heart can begin to treat it as known, even when it has never truly been explored. Many believers can recite Psalm 23 from memory and still live with deep anxiety, hidden fear, spiritual confusion, and an exhausting need to control everything around them. That should make us pause, because if this psalm is so known, why is its power so often missing from daily life? The answer is uncomfortable. Many people love Psalm 23 for the feeling it gives them, but they have never allowed its truth to search them deeply. They admire its beauty without surrendering to its meaning. They enjoy the comfort of its words without accepting the demands of its message. This psalm is not simply telling you that God can calm you down when life becomes difficult. It is revealing a relationship in which your safety, direction, peace, and endurance are all tied to one reality. The Lord Himself must become your shepherd, and that changes everything. This is why Psalm 23 is often loved but rarely understood. People approach it as a spiritual blanket, something to cover pain for a moment, when in fact it is a call to a whole new posture before God. It asks whether you are being led or merely asking for help from a distance. It asks whether your peace comes from circumstances improving or from trusting the one who walks with you. It asks whether your faith is built on true dependence or on occasional emotional relief. There is also another reason this psalm is misunderstood. Many people read it through the lens of comfort alone, but David wrote it through the lens of covenant, struggle, trust, and divine care in real danger. This is not a psalm written by someone who had a simple life. David knew what it meant to be hunted, rejected, tested, and broken. So when he speaks of the shepherd, he is not speaking as someone repeating a religious idea. He is speaking as someone who has learned that without God, the soul loses its way. That gives every line a seriousness that many people miss, and that is what makes this psalm so piercing. It does not flatter the human heart, it exposes it. It shows how deeply we want comfort without surrender, reassurance without obedience, blessings without guidance. We want the green pastures, but not always the shepherd's direction. We want peace, but we do not always want to admit how lost we are without him. Psalm 23 becomes profound the moment you realize it is not just speaking about God's kindness. It is speaking about your need to stop pretending you can lead yourself. That is where true understanding begins. Not when you can quote the psalm, but when you recognize yourself inside it. When you realize that its beauty is not there to entertain your emotions, but to pull your heart back into dependence on God. And once that truth begins to settle in, the very first words of the psalm no longer sound familiar in a casual way. They begin to feel weighty, demanding, and deeply personal. The Lord is my shepherd is not poetry only, it is surrender. The moment David says, "The Lord is my shepherd," he is saying far more than most people realize. This is not a decorative sentence. It is not poetic language chosen only to sound beautiful. It is a confession of dependence so deep that many people resist it without even noticing. Because to call the Lord your shepherd is to admit that you are not the one who sees everything clearly. You are not the one who can protect your own soul. You are not the one who can guide your life with perfect wisdom. That is where this psalm begins, not with human strength, but with surrendered trust. This is what makes these words so confronting. In the modern world, people admire independence. They are taught to trust themselves, follow their instincts, build their own path, and stay in control. Even many believers carry this mindset into their relationship with God. They want His blessing, but not always His direction. They want His protection, but not always His authority. They want the comfort of belonging to Him without the cost of being led by Him. But Psalm 23 allows no such illusion. If the Lord is truly your shepherd, then your life is no longer centered on your own control. A sheep does not survive by confidence in itself. A sheep survives because it stays close to the shepherd. It depends on the shepherd to find food, to avoid danger, to know the right path, to defend against predators, and to rescue it when it wanders. David chose this image because it humbles the human heart. It leaves no room for pride. It reminds us that spiritual maturity does not begin when we feel strong enough to manage life on our own. It begins when we finally understand how much we need God's guidance every single day. And that need is not weakness, it is truth. The soul was never designed to lead itself apart from God. That is why so many people look composed on the outside while feeling lost inside. They may have plans, goals, intelligence, and effort, yet still carry a deep restlessness that never leaves. Why? Because direction without the shepherd is not true security. It is only movement. A person can be busy, ambitious, and admired, and still be spiritually disoriented. David knew that peace does not come from being in control. Peace comes from knowing who is leading you. This changes the way you hear the psalm. "The Lord is my shepherd" is not a sweet line to admire from a distance. It is a spiritual decision. It means I will stop pretending I know better than God. It means I will trust His voice above my fear, His direction above my impulses, His wisdom above my limited understanding. It means I will not reduce God to a helper who appears only when I am desperate. I will recognize Him as the one who has the right to lead every part of my life. And this is where the psalm becomes deeply personal. Because it is one thing to say the Lord is a shepherd, it is another thing to say the Lord is my shepherd. That one word changes everything. It speaks of relationship, closeness, belonging, and trust. David is not making a theological statement from a distance. He is declaring a lived reality. He knows the shepherd, and he has chosen to place himself under his care. That is why the rest of the psalm carries such power. Everything that follows is built on this first surrender. "I shall not want" does not mean a life without problems. When most people hear the words, "I shall not want," they immediately think of a life where nothing painful happens and every need is instantly met. They imagine ease, abundance, and visible blessing. But that is not what David is saying. He is not describing a life without hardship. He is describing a life sustained by the shepherd. That is a very different thing. Psalm 23 does not promise that trouble will never come. It promises that under God's care, nothing essential for the soul will be missing. This matters because many people silently build their faith around the wrong expectation. They assume that if God is truly with them, life should become lighter, clearer, and more comfortable. Then when pressure comes, when doors close, when sorrow enters, when fear rises, they begin to wonder whether God has failed them or whether they have somehow lost His favor. But David is not speaking from that kind of illusion. He knew what it meant to face enemies, uncertainty, grief, and danger. So when he says, "I shall not want," he is not denying reality. He is declaring confidence in the middle of reality. What he is really saying is this: because the Lord is my shepherd, I will not lack what God knows I truly need. That does not mean I will receive everything I desire at the moment I desire it. It means I can trust that God will not withhold what is necessary for His purpose, my formation, and my endurance. This is divine sufficiency, not indulgence. It is the confidence that even when life feels empty, God has not abandoned the soul He is leading. And this is where the verse becomes far more profound than many people imagine, because the deepest forms of lack are not always material. A person can have money and still lack peace. They can have opportunities and still lack direction. They can have relationships and still lack rest. They can appear successful and still be starving inwardly. David is pointing us to a kind of provision the world cannot measure. The shepherd gives what sustains the inner life. He gives presence when fear presses in. He gives strength when the heart grows weak. He gives clarity when confusion clouds the mind. He gives enough grace for the next step, even when the whole path is not visible. This also confronts the restless spirit that always wants more control, more certainty, more recognition, more proof, more immediate results. The human heart is often dissatisfied because it is trying to feed itself with things that cannot carry the soul. But when God becomes your shepherd, desire itself begins to be reordered. You start to learn that the greatest blessing is not getting everything you once chased. It is being so kept by God that you are no longer ruled by inner emptiness. That is a miracle many people never notice. So no, "I shall not want" does not mean you will never cry, never wait, never struggle, or never feel pressure. It means that none of those things will have the final word over your life if the shepherd is leading you. It means your story is not defined by what seems absent in the moment, but by the faithful presence of the one who knows exactly what to give, what to remove, what to delay, and what to provide at the right time. And once you begin to understand that, The next images in Psalm 23 stop sounding like simple comfort and start revealing how God restores a soul that the world has left exhausted. The green pastures and still waters are signs of restoration, not escape. When people hear about green pastures and still waters, they often imagine a life with no pressure, no conflict, no wounds, and no exhaustion. They picture a peaceful scene far removed from the harshness of reality. But Psalm 23 is not offering fantasy. David is not describing an escape from life. He is revealing the kind of restoration God gives within a life that has already known strain, fear, and weariness. These images are not about avoiding the world. They are about the shepherd restoring the soul in the middle of a world that can drain it. This is what makes the verse so powerful. Green pastures are not simply places of comfort, they are places of nourishment. Still waters are not only beautiful to imagine, they are places where thirst is safely met. David is showing us that God knows the soul cannot survive on anxiety, performance, noise, and endless inattention. The shepherd leads his people to what truly sustains them. He does not merely give orders, he provides what the heart needs in order to live again. And this speaks directly to people who are exhausted without knowing how to explain it. There are many who keep moving, keep smiling, keep working, keep showing up, while inwardly they are dry, restless, and spiritually drained. Their body continues, but their soul is tired. They are surrounded by activity, yet starved of peace. They are informed, connected, and busy, yet strangely empty inside. Psalm 23 tells us that God does not ignore that condition. He leads people into restoration on purpose. He knows how to bring them where fear begins to loosen its grip, where the inner noise begins to quiet down, and where the soul starts breathing again. That is why these places must not be misunderstood. The green pastures are not laziness. The still waters are not passivity. This is not a call to disconnect from responsibility. It is a revelation that true spiritual strength is not built only in battle. It is also built in the places where God feeds, calms, and renews what has been depleted. A soul that is never restored becomes vulnerable. It loses sensitivity, gratitude, clarity, and endurance. The shepherd knows that. So he does not only lead through challenge, he also leads into renewal. There is also something deeply tender here. Sheep do not create green pastures for themselves. They do not discover still waters by their own wisdom. They are led there. In the same way, many people do not know how to restore themselves. They know how to distract themselves, numb themselves, entertain themselves, and keep themselves occupied. But true restoration is different. It is not found by accident, and it is not produced by human effort alone. It comes when God, in His mercy, brings the soul into a place where it can receive again what it has been missing. So these words are more than peaceful imagery. They are evidence of how personal God's care really is. He does not only protect you from danger, He also notices when you are running on emptiness. He does not only correct your path, He also nourishes your spirit. He leads you where you can recover what fear, guilt, stress, and spiritual dryness have been taking from you. And once that truth settles into the heart, the next words become even more personal, because David is about to reveal that the shepherd is not only concerned with external rest. He goes much deeper than that. He restores the soul itself. He restores my soul speaks to wounds deeper than the visible ones. There are wounds that people can see, and there are wounds that remain hidden for years. Psalm 23 reaches the hidden ones. When David says, He restores my soul, he's not speaking about a surface-level relief that fades by the next day. He's speaking about a work of God that touches the deepest parts of a person, the places where fear settles, where grief lingers, where shame hides, where disappointment hardens the heart, and where silent exhaustion slowly steals joy. This is not shallow comfort. This is holy restoration. Many people keep going while carrying damage no one around them can fully detect. They know how to function, how to smile, how to answer questions, how to stay busy, and how to appear strong. But inside, something has been worn down. Some are tired from battles they never chose. Some are carrying guilt from sins they cannot forget. Some are wounded by betrayal, crushed by loss, or burdened by prayers that seem unanswered. Others are simply spiritually drained, not because they stopped believing in God, but because life kept pressing on them until their inner world became fragile. Psalm 23 speaks directly to that condition. It tells us the shepherd sees what others miss. This is what makes the verse so intimate. David does not say God merely helps the soul endure. He says God restores it. That means God is able to bring back what pain has damaged. He can renew what has become weak. He can heal what has been internally fractured. He can breathe life into places that feel numb, cold, or distant. And that matters because some people no longer expect real restoration. They have adjusted to surviving. They have accepted inner heaviness as normal. They have learned to live with spiritual fatigue as if it were permanent. But the shepherd does not approach the soul with indifference. He comes with restoring mercy. This restoration is not always loud or immediate. Sometimes it begins quietly. A truth from Scripture reaches the heart differently than before. A prayer becomes honest again. A burden that felt unbearable becomes lighter in God's presence. Tears that were held back finally fall. A hardened area begins to soften. Hope that seemed dead begins to breathe again. God often restores in ways deeper than emotion because He is not only making a person feel better for a moment, He is rebuilding them from within. He's doing a work that reaches identity, trust, peace, and spiritual strength. And this reveals something crucial about the shepherd. He is not only concerned with where you are going, He is concerned with what is happening inside you while you walk. He does not lead bruised souls as if they were machines. He cares about what has been drained, broken, confused, and burdened inside the human heart. That is why Psalm 23 is not just about divine direction, it is about divine tenderness. God is not impatient with your weariness. He is not distant from your inner pain. He is the one who knows how to restore what no human hand can fully reach. That is why this psalm becomes so personal when it is truly understood. It tells the wounded heart that healing is not a fantasy. It tells the tired believer that renewal is still possible. It tells the ashamed soul that grace can reach deeper than failure. And once you realize the shepherd restores the soul itself, the next words carry even more weight because restoration is not the end of His care. He restores you so He can lead you, and that leadership reveals something many people forget. God is not only interested in your comfort, He is deeply invested in your path. He leads me in paths of righteousness means God cares about direction, not only destination. Many people want God to bless where they hope to arrive, but they give far less attention to how they are living on the way there. Psalm 23 corrects that mindset with great force. David says, "He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake." That means the shepherd is not only concerned with rescuing you when you fall apart or comforting you when life hurts. He is also committed to leading you in a way that reflects His character. God does not simply bring His people to a final destination. He shapes the road they walk. This matters because many believers reduce righteousness to a religious word that sounds distant and abstract. But in this psalm, righteousness is deeply practical. It is the path of alignment with God. It is the way of walking that reflects trust, obedience, integrity, and a life that is being formed by the shepherd's voice. Righteousness is not about appearing morally impressive before others. It is about being led away from crooked paths that damage the soul and into ways that honor the God who leads you. And here is where the psalm becomes uncomfortable in the best possible way. Because many people want God to comfort them, provide for them, and defend them while still keeping the right to choose their own way. They ask for divine help but resist divine direction. They want peace without obedience. They want reassurance without surrender. They want the shepherd close enough to solve their problems, but not close enough to challenge their path. Yet David shows us that the shepherd does not work that way. His care includes guidance. His love includes direction. His goodness refuses to abandon us to the impulses, habits, and decisions that would quietly destroy us. There is something else here that deserves attention. David does not say he finds the right path by his own wisdom. He says, "He leads me." That is crucial. Left to ourselves, we are capable of calling many things right that are not right at all. Human emotion can be sincere and still be wrong. Desire can feel powerful and still be misleading. Fear can speak loudly and still not tell the truth. That is why the soul needs more than good intentions. It needs a shepherd who sees farther than it does, one who knows where compromise leads, where pride leads, where bitterness leads, where self-deception leads. God's direction is mercy, not restriction. And David adds something beautiful and humbling when he says, "For his name's sake." This means the shepherd leads his people in a way that is consistent with who he is. He does not guide randomly. He leads according to his own faithful character. Your life under God's care is tied to his name, his nature, his honor, and his covenant faithfulness. That means his guidance is not uncertain, careless, or cruel. He leads because he is good. He leads because his name is trustworthy. He leads because abandoning his people to darkness would contradict who he is. This changes the way we hear the psalm. God is not only saying, "I will be with you when life becomes painful." He is also saying, "I will show you how to walk in a way that keeps your heart close to mine." That is why the paths of righteousness matter so much. The shepherd is not just trying to get you through life. He is forming you while you live it. And once you begin to understand that, the next verse becomes even more powerful. Because sometimes the right path still passes through darkness, and that darkness is where many people begin to doubt whether God is still leading at all. The valley is part of the journey, not proof of abandonment. One of the most shocking turns in Psalm 23 happens when the scene changes without warning. A moment ago, there were green pastures and still waters. Now there is a valley, deep shadows, and the presence of evil. That shift is not accidental. It reveals a truth many people struggle to accept. Being led by God does not mean you will never walk through dark places. In fact, some of the paths the shepherd chooses still pass through valleys, and that means the valley itself is not evidence that God has left you. It may be the very place where his presence becomes most real. This is where many believers become confused. They assume that if life becomes painful, uncertain, heavy, or frightening, something must be wrong with their faith or their relationship with God. They begin to think that peace with God should remove every dark season. But David says something very different. He does not say, "If I walk through the valley." He says, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." That language matters. It tells us the valley is not a strange interruption to the life of faith. It is part of the human journey, even for those who are being led by the shepherd. And that truth is deeply important because valleys reveal what easy seasons often hide. In the valley, your fears become louder. Your weaknesses become harder to ignore. Your need for God becomes impossible to disguise. The valley strips away illusions. It exposes whether your confidence was in God or only in comfortable circumstances. It tests whether your faith was rooted in his presence or in your sense of control. That is why these seasons feel so intense. They do not only bring pain, they bring revelation. Still, the psalm does not glorify suffering for its own sake. David is not pretending the valley is pleasant. He is naming it honestly. It is dark. It is threatening. It carries the shadow of death itself. This is the language of real danger, real grief, real uncertainty, real spiritual pressure. And yet David does not collapse under it. Why? Because the defining truth of the valley is not the darkness around him, it is the shepherd beside him. The valley is real, but it is not ultimate. The shadow is present, but it does not have final authority. That is where this psalm becomes so powerful for anyone in a hard season. You may be walking through a valley of grief, unanswered prayer, emotional exhaustion, betrayal, sickness, confusion, or inward warfare. And if you are, Psalm 23 does not insult your pain with shallow positivity. It does something far better. It tells you that the darkness you are facing is not proof that God has stepped away. The shepherd does not stop leading when the path gets hard. He remains present in the place where fear tries to take over. He remains near when your strength feels small. He remains faithful when your emotions cannot see clearly. And this is why David says he walks through the valley. He does not live there. He does not belong to it. He does not build his identity inside it. The valley is a passage, not a permanent home. That distinction matters because pain often tries to convince people that what they feel now is what they will always feel. But the shepherd leads through the valley, not around every dark place, not always out of it immediately, but through it with a faithfulness that does not break. And once that begins to settle in the heart, the next words rise with extraordinary force, because David is about to show that courage is not born from the absence of danger, but from the presence of God. I will fear no evil is the language of faith under pressure. When David says, I will fear no evil, he is not pretending that evil does not exist. He is not denying danger. He is not speaking like someone who has never trembled, never suffered, never faced uncertainty. He is speaking as a man who knows exactly how real evil can be, and yet has discovered a deeper reality that stands above it. This is what gives the verse its power. It is not the language of denial. It is the language of faith under pressure. That matters because many people misunderstand courage. They think courage belongs only to naturally strong personalities, to fearless people, to those who always appear calm and unshaken. But biblical courage is something different. It does not come from temperament, it comes from trust. David is not saying that his mind never feels the weight of danger. He is saying that fear will not rule him because God's presence is greater than what threatens him. In other words, fear may knock at the door of the heart, but it does not have permission to sit on the throne. This is where the verse becomes deeply personal. Every person knows what it is like to confront evil in some form. Sometimes it appears as external opposition, betrayal, injustice, sickness, violence, or loss. Other times it comes as inward torment, relentless anxiety, dark thoughts, temptation, condemnation, or spiritual oppression. Evil does not always arrive in dramatic ways. Sometimes it moves quietly, pressing on the mind, draining peace, whispering lies, magnifying threats, and convincing the soul that it is alone. David knew this kind of pressure. That is why his words carry such weight. He is not speaking from theory. He is speaking from tested trust. And notice something important. He does not say, I will fear no evil because I am strong enough. He does not say, I will fear no evil because I understand everything that is happening. He does not say, I will fear no evil because I can control the outcome. He says, for you are with me. That changes everything. The victory over fear is not found in human certainty. It is found in divine companionship. God's presence does not always remove the threat immediately, but it changes the meaning of the threat. It reminds the soul that it is not abandoned in the fight. This is why faith becomes most visible under pressure. Anyone can speak words of confidence when life is easy, but when the valley is dark, when the future is unclear, when the heart feels weak, and when evil seems near, then trust in God takes on a different kind of beauty. It becomes costly. It becomes real. It becomes a holy refusal to let darkness define reality more than God does. That is what David is showing us. Fear is not defeated because circumstances become harmless. Fear is defeated because the shepherd remains present. This also exposes a painful truth about the human heart. Many people are not controlled by what is actually happening to them, but by what they imagine could happen. Fear grows by feeding on possibilities, on uncertainty, on the unknown. It tries to make the shadow feel more powerful than the shepherd. But David pushes back against that instinct. He does not magnify the evil. He magnifies the presence of God. That is the turning point. The soul becomes stronger when it stops staring only at the darkness and starts resting in the one who walks through it without trembling. And once you understand that, the next phrase becomes even more profound. Because David is not only comforted by the fact that God is near, he is comforted by the way God cares. The shepherd's presence is not passive. It comes with protection, guidance, and loving authority. That is why the next words reveal a kind of comfort far deeper than mere reassurance. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me, reveals the love that protects and corrects. At first, these words may sound strange. Most people understand comfort as something soft, gentle, and calming. But David says he is comforted by a rod and a staff. That means his idea of comfort is deeper than emotional soothing. He is not only comforted by God's nearness, he is comforted by the kind of shepherd God is, a shepherd who does not watch passively, a shepherd who protects, guides, rescues, and when necessary, corrects. That is the kind of comfort a wounded and vulnerable soul truly needs. The rod was a tool of defense. It represented strength, protection, and the shepherd's ability to confront threats. The staff was used to guide, pull back, and keep the sheep from wandering into danger. Together, they reveal that God's care is active. He does not simply stand nearby offering comforting thoughts. He intervenes, he defends, he directs, he reaches for his people when they drift toward places that would harm them. And David says this brings him comfort. Why? Because real comfort is not found in being left alone to follow every impulse. Real comfort is found in belonging to a shepherd who cares enough not to let you destroy yourself. This challenges a very common misunderstanding of God's love. Many people want a version of divine care that protects them from pain, but never confronts their pride, habits, stubbornness, or self-deception. They want God to defend them from enemies, but not to redirect them when they begin moving in the wrong direction. Yet David understands something deeper. A shepherd who only comforts without correcting would not truly love the sheep. If God allowed you to walk into spiritual danger without interruption, that would not be kindness. It would be abandonment. The rod and the staff are comforting precisely because they prove you are not abandoned. There is something deeply mature in this part of the psalm. David does not only celebrate God's blessings when they feel pleasant, he finds comfort in God's authority. He trusts that when God restrains, warns, redirects, or corrects, it is not rejection, it is care. That truth can change the way a believer sees difficult seasons. Sometimes the closed door, the inner conviction, the painful exposure, or the disruption of our plans is not the absence of God's goodness. It may be the staff of the shepherd pulling us back from a path we were too blind to evaluate rightly. It may be the rod standing between us and something that would have wounded us far more deeply. And this matters because many people only feel safe when they are in control. But true safety is found elsewhere. It is found in the knowledge that God's wisdom is better than your instincts. His correction is kinder than your self-will, and his defense is stronger than your fear. David is saying that the soul rests more deeply when it knows the shepherd is both tender and strong. Not weak tenderness, not harsh authority, but holy care that knows exactly when to defend and exactly when to guide. This is why these words carry so much healing power. They remind us that God's love is not indifferent. He does not leave you alone in the name of freedom. He stays involved in your path. He guards, redirects, and keeps watch. And once the heart understands that, the scene in Psalm 23 begins to rise from survival into something more astonishing. Because the shepherd does not only lead through valleys and defend in danger, he also prepares abundance in the very presence of opposition, and that reveals a level of divine confidence that changes everything. The prepared table is victory in the presence of opposition. David now moves into one of the most astonishing images in the entire psalm. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. This is not a small detail. It is a breathtaking declaration of divine confidence. God does not merely help his people survive opposition. He prepares a table for them right in front of it. That means the presence of enemies does not cancel the presence of God's care. Conflict may still exist. Threats may still be visible. Tension may still be real. But none of that prevents the shepherd from establishing peace, dignity, provision, and communion for the one who belongs to him. This changes the way many people think about victory. Most assume that peace only comes after every enemy disappears, after every conflict is resolved, after every threat is removed. But Psalm 23 reveals a deeper kind of triumph. God is able to give rest before the battle is over. He is able to sustain the soul while pressure still exists. He is able to honor his servant while opposition is still watching. This is not the fragile peace that depends on perfect circumstances. It is a peace rooted in God's authority, a peace so strong that it can sit down at the table while fear remains outside trying to intimidate. And there is something deeply personal in this image. A table is not a battlefield image. It is a place of fellowship, welcome, and provision. It speaks of being received, of being cared for, of not having to live in a constant state of panic. So when God prepares a table in the presence of enemies, he is showing that your identity is not determined by what threatens you. Your story is not ruled by the voices against you, the darkness around you, or the pressure pressing on your life. The shepherd has the final word. He can make you sit where fear expected you to fall. This also speaks to those who feel surrounded. Some people live with visible enemies. Others carry invisible ones. Criticism, spiritual attack, injustice, slander, temptation, anxiety, shame, painful memories, or recurring inner battles can all take on the role of enemies that seem to sit too close to the soul. Psalm 23 does not pretend those things are unreal. It simply reveals that they are not sovereign. God is not intimidated by what intimidates you. He does not need every enemy to vanish before he can bless, strengthen, and establish you. There is also honor in this verse. In the ancient world, to be seated at a prepared table was a sign of acceptance and dignity. God is not merely giving David enough to endure. He is publicly affirming that the one under his care is not forsaken. This is what makes the scene so powerful. The enemies can see that the shepherd has not withdrawn. They can see that God's covenant care remains. They can see that what was meant to produce despair has not cut off the flow of divine provision. The table itself becomes testimony. And this is where the psalm rises even higher. Because the prepared table is not just about food or safety, it is about the settled certainty that God's people are not left scrambling for scraps in the face of evil. They are received, sustained, and honored by the one whose authority no enemy can challenge. Once that truth begins to settle in the heart, the next words deepen the picture even more. Because David is about to show that the shepherd's care is not measured only by survival in conflict, but by a life marked by consecration, welcome, and overflowing grace. The anointing and overflowing cup reveal a life marked by grace. When David says, "You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows," the psalm moves beyond survival and enters the language of abundance. This is no longer only about being protected in danger or sustained in the presence of enemies. It is about being received with honor, covered with favor, and touched by a grace that exceeds bare necessity. The shepherd does not care for his people in a cold and minimal way. He does not simply keep them alive. He welcomes them, marks them, refreshes them, and fills their lives with more of his goodness than they could have produced for themselves. In the world of Scripture, anointing with oil carried deep meaning. It could point to consecration, joy, healing, refreshment, and being received with dignity. David is showing that God's care is not mechanical. It is personal. The shepherd does not treat his people like burdens to be managed. He treats them like those who belong near him. To have the head anointed is to be more than tolerated. It is to be honored. It is to be touched by a sign of divine welcome that says you are not forgotten, not discarded, not merely surviving by chance. You are under the attentive care of God. This matters because many people live as though grace is always scarce. They expect just enough strength to crawl forward, just enough peace to endure the day, just enough mercy to avoid collapse. But David speaks of something more. He speaks of a cup that overflows. That image reveals a God whose generosity is not measured by human limitation. The overflow is not about luxury for the flesh. It is about the richness of divine care that cannot be reduced to survival language. God gives presence, peace, purpose, mercy, and sustaining power in ways that exceed what the soul could demand or deserve. And yet this part of the psalm must be understood correctly. Overflow does not mean a life with no trouble. David has already spoken of valleys and enemies, so the overflowing cup is not proof that hardship has disappeared. It is proof that hardship has not exhausted the shepherd's supply. Grace is still flowing. Joy is still possible. Strength is still available. God's presence is still active. This is why the image is so powerful. Even after darkness, danger, and opposition, the psalm does not end in depletion. It ends in abundance. There is also a beautiful spiritual reversal here. The world teaches people to measure life by what is missing. It trains the eye to focus on what has not happened, what has been delayed, what was lost, and what others seem to have more of. But David is teaching the soul to look again. Under the shepherd's care, life is not defined only by what was threatened. It is also defined by what God keeps pouring in. The cup overflows because divine grace continues to outrun human emptiness. God remains generous even when life has been hard. This is what makes the image so healing. It tells the weary believer that their story is not reduced to wounds, battles, and endurance. There is also honor. There is also joy. There is also refreshment. There is also grace that runs over the edges of what seemed possible. And once the heart begins to see that, the final movement of the psalm comes into view, because David is about to make one of the most hopeful declarations in all of Scripture. He will show that the future of the one who belongs to the shepherd is not being chased by fear, but pursued by goodness and mercy. Goodness and mercy shall follow me changes how we see the future. Most people live with the feeling that something dark is always following them. Fear follows them, regret follows them, failure follows them, the memory of what they lost follows them, the pressure of tomorrow follows them. Even when nothing terrible is happening in the moment, they carry the quiet expectation that something will go wrong, that peace will not last, that disappointment is always near. But David speaks against that entire way of seeing life. He says, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life." That is not a small statement. It is a complete reorientation of the soul. David does not say goodness and mercy might follow him when life becomes easy. He does not say they will follow him only in seasons of visible blessing. He says they will follow him all the days of his life. That includes bright days and dark ones, seasons of joy and seasons of pressure, moments of clarity and moments of tears. This is what makes the declaration so powerful. The faithfulness of God is not seasonal. His mercy is not fragile. His goodness does not disappear the moment life becomes complicated. The shepherd's care remains active across the whole journey, and the word "follow" here carries more force than many people realize. This is not the picture of goodness and mercy drifting somewhere far behind, barely present. It is the image of God's covenant care pursuing the one who belongs to him. While fear tries to chase the heart, David says something stronger is in pursuit. While the enemy wants to define the future through dread, David declares that God's own character is moving after him. Goodness is the expression of God's generous heart. Mercy is the expression of God's compassionate love that does not give up on weak and needy people. Together, they tell the believer that the future is not empty. It is inhabited by the faithfulness of God. This changes everything about how a person walks through life. If you believe fear is what follows you, you become defensive, restless, and suspicious of peace. If you believe condemnation follows you, you begin to live bent inward, never fully able to receive grace. If you believe failure follows you, you start expecting defeat before the battle even begins. But when the soul truly receives Psalm 23, it begins to walk differently. Not because every question has been answered, but because the shepherd's character has become more real than the threats ahead. David is not claiming that every day will feel easy. He is claiming that every day will be accompanied by God. There is also something deeply healing here for those who have spent years expecting the worst. Some people have been shaped by pain for so long that hope feels unnatural. They know how to brace themselves, how to prepare for loss, how to expect disappointment before it arrives. But Psalm 23 breaks that pattern. It teaches the heart to expect God, not as a vague idea, but as living goodness and active mercy working through every chapter of life. Even in discipline, there is mercy. Even in delay, there can be goodness. Even in sorrow, the shepherd has not withdrawn his covenant care, and this is why David can speak with such confidence. He is no longer reading life through the lens of fear. He is reading it through the character of God. That is the final transformation Psalm 23 creates. It does not only calm a troubled mind for a moment, it teaches the soul to interpret the future differently. It teaches the believer that the days ahead are not abandoned territory. They are still under the shepherd's care. And when that truth finally settles into the heart, only one conclusion remains. Psalm 23 was never meant to be admired from a distance. It was meant to be lived. Psalm 23 is not only to be admired, but lived. At this point, the deepest mistake would be to hear Psalm 23 as beautiful truth and leave it there. That is what many people do. They admire it, repeat it, frame it, post it, quote it in difficult moments, and still never allow it to become the pattern of their lives. But Psalm 23 was not given merely to be appreciated, it was given to be inhabited. It is not just a passage to comfort you for a few minutes. It is a spiritual way of seeing God, yourself, suffering, provision, fear, correction, mercy, and the future. It is a life under the shepherd. That means the real question is no longer whether Psalm 23 is moving. The real question is whether it is true in you. Can you honestly say, "The Lord is my shepherd"? Not the shepherd of your parents, your church, your childhood memories, or your religious language. Your shepherd, the one you trust, follow, and depend on. Because everything in this psalm flows from that first surrender. Without it, the words remain beautiful but distant. With it, they become alive. The green pastures become more than poetry. The valley becomes more than fear. The rod and staff become more than symbols. Goodness and mercy become more than hopeful ideas. They become the lived reality of a soul that belongs to God. And this is where the psalm confronts every heart. Some people want the comfort of the shepherd without the closeness of the shepherd. They want the table, but not the trust. They want the peace, but not the surrender. They want the promise that goodness and mercy will follow them while still holding tightly to the illusion that they can lead themselves. But Psalm 23 offers no such arrangement. It is an invitation to a different kind of life, one where control is laid down, fear is no longer the master, and the soul learns to rest under the care of God, even when the path is difficult. This is why Psalm 23 remains so powerful after all these centuries. It speaks to the deepest human need, not simply the need for relief, but the need for a shepherd. Not simply the need to survive, but the need to be led, restored, guarded, corrected, nourished, and kept. The psalm is profound because it tells the truth about us. We are not as self-sufficient as we pretend. We are not as secure as we try to appear. We are not meant to wander through life feeding our souls on anxiety, pride, and temporary comforts. We were made to live near the shepherd. So this is the moment to stop hearing Psalm 23 as a familiar passage and begin hearing it as a personal call. Return to the shepherd if your heart has wandered. Trust him if fear has been governing your mind. Let him lead you if you have been exhausting yourself trying to control every outcome. Let him restore what is broken in you. Let him teach you what real peace is, because Psalm 23 is not asking you to admire a distant God. It is inviting you into a life where his presence becomes your confidence, his care becomes your rest, and his faithfulness becomes the lens through which you see every season. And if that happens, then Psalm 23 will no longer be just a chapter you know. It will become a reality you live.